Hi everyone. So I am going to take an opportunity to talk about something that can be considered controversial. I really don't think it should be, but before I go on, I want to make sure I elaborate. This is my personal opinion on this, and I'm going to try very hard not to misspeak and not misrepresent myself. So diversity in the workplace and diversity in general is something that I am very for a number of reasons, but I think that it is approached in not a great way the way we do it today. So at least from my point of view, when I look at the way we approach diversity, which my point of view could be skewed. I do watch a lot of 24-hour news, but it seems to me that we put a lot of emphasis on race and gender specifically. And when we ask why is diversity important to, say, a workplace, the answer is normally something like, we want people with diverse experiences, which I agree with that part very, very strongly. But then when we go to quantify and measure, we kind of measure it based on race and gender and things like that. So I understand why we do this, first of all, because metrics are different than ideals by a big margin. It's easy to know why something is important. It's much harder to measure if you're making progress towards that goal. And here's kind of what I mean. So I am white, I am a male. I already don't score much to the diversity metric that we use today. But I work in the Maryland, Washington, D.C., Baltimore area. And I think I actually, when it comes to experiences and that kind of thing, I think I bring a lot to the table that isn't already there. So I grew up in a small town of less than 3,000 people in a small area, no city for a good hour and a half, and even then it wouldn't be a big city. To get to a big city like Tampa or Orlando, you're talking about around a 2-hour drive. That's not how a lot of people that I work with, they were raised in more dense areas like the one that I live in now. So with that upbringing comes a lot of differences. One is that when you grow up and you can't walk anywhere. So the only place I had a hope of walking to was a gas station. So, and that would have been a pretty decent walk. Beyond that, you're talking an all-day trek and you'd probably die of dehydration or, heat exposure, basically, because I grew up in Florida. Not saying it can't be done. Back in the day, I'm sure it was a little bit more normal to walk further distances like that, but it wasn't practical, is my point. So growing up that way gave me a unique set of experiences. One is that most of my childhood, I obviously did not have a car, and that meant a little bit more isolation. It also meant that I had to rely a lot more on the people around me that I did have. And while there was less cooperation on a larger scale with greater numbers of people, there was more cooperation with the fewer number of people around me. There's a good amount of self-reliance that if you do have a vehicle and it gets stuck, you're gonna have to figure out a way to get it out most of the time. You have to figure out things on your own a little bit more often when you're so far away. Now, I didn't have a bad upbringing, but it was different than that of a lot of people around me. I am a little bit more southern than the people I live around because I lived in Florida, and I know Florida's not really the South, but it's much more the South than, say, Maryland is, especially when you live in a rural area. So I want to specify that I'm not saying that any of this is good or bad, that I'm just smarter than other people because, I grew up having to rely on myself more. That's really not the case. It's different, right? Living in a city, you also have to rely on yourself, but the challenges that you're faced with are quite a bit different. So, for instance, you really probably don't have nearly as much of the challenge of having to trek a a distance that one shouldn't trek to get to something that you need. But you may have more of a challenge with dealing with other people in close proximity. I definitely did not have to deal as much with things like neighbors and disagreeing with people that I don't know, because there weren't that many people I didn't know around. Honestly, the familiarity with anyone within proximity was pretty quick and easy because there weren't that many of them, and you kind of wanted to get to know each other. It's not the same as in a city where you can walk out of your door and see someone that you've never seen before, and it's no big deal. It's kind of the way things are normally. So this is kind of just one example. I'm kind of using myself here. There are a lot of other things that give a diversity of experience. And one of the big ones, I would say, is people from other countries other than the United States. That is a huge one, that almost everything about that kind of situation, from your education to language to climate, although that can be true within the United States, it can be different. And I think that makes people from outside the United States very valuable in the diversity respect anyway. Now, I want to talk about why is diversity important, why is diversity of experience important to what's wrong with just having everybody be the same? Like, what's wrong with everybody having a similar background, similar upbringing, similar everything? And that's that when you are working on complex systems and problems, you're kind of in danger, of getting stuck, getting deadlocked on something, getting to a point where no one knows what to do and no one can proceed any further. So this is a problem because it generally means you have to go to outside help, and outside help is expensive. So the more diverse we are, the higher chance we have of accomplishing these goals without requiring outside assistance, and that is very valuable. So my issue with the way we do diversity is when it finally comes to the metrics, how we measure things, we generally just used race and gender, and I understand why. Those things are very easy to measure. You can figure them out a lot of the time just by looking at someone, and if not, it's easy to, they're very solid definitions that you can at least check a box, is what I mean. I'm not trying to say that every person of one gender or another is the same, or that every person of one race or another is the same. What I'm trying to say is you can put a box on a form and act that way. And you can check that box and you can say, I've got my metrics, see, I proved it, we're doing better in this realm. And I'm not saying that, going this route and the people that want to measure this route are bad, because it's hard to measure the route I'm talking about. You can't just put a box on a form that that says, oh, did you have an experience like this or like that, or like 1,000 other possible experiences and thousands of possible subjects, or human experiences, or possibilities would be a better word. So I think we're doing our best here, but I try to look at it from a different perspective. I mean, I do these videos because there was a time where partially, I don't want to say it was because of my upbringing, but for whatever reason, I can't say it was because of my experiences. I didn't think I really had a hope of working where I work today and doing something as technical as I do. That's one thing that helped me get through college, is I had an incredible fear that I didn't belong, and it was just a matter of time until they, send me back to that small town and I go back to working at McDonald's. I'm past that now, I think, but, that's the kind of thing I don't want to happen to other people as much, although the motivation in getting there is a good thing. I feel like if it was just a little bit worse for me, I would have given up or just never tried in the first place. And that is what I really, when I think about a thing like diversity, I think there are talented people out there. There are people that are like me in at least one way, that what I'm doing, working with technology in some way, especially things like programming, it is something that not only would they be good at, they would be happy doing. And I think about myself and wonder, what if I never got here? What if I never did what I did? I wouldn't think about it so much if it weren't so close to what would have happened. I mean, I didn't go to college, I didn't go to university anyway until I was 27. And even before that, it was late 20s. So that's partially because I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think that I could, work as a programmer or a software developer or anything like that. That's one thing I think that comes out of growing up in a small town, perhaps, although I know people that also were able to overcome that, is there's less of an expectation that somebody that comes from a country area works in software. It's not what's expected, where, it seems like a more viable route if you live in the city. And I realize this is true for a lot more situations than just this one. And what kills me is, and this is why I do these videos. I couldn't imagine my life if I had missed this opportunity, this little stairway to heaven that I almost didn't see and would have just kept on going. Because I really wasn't happy before in my life. I mean, I wasn't. And I found something that not only makes me successful and productive, but happy. I'm happy, and I feel like my life is meaningful. Now, some of this comes from just differences in who we are and where we were brought up, and yes, probably the race, culture, the way that is presented to us as, you are this type of person, this is what you do, right? That kind of comes from the media and from television and movies, and I'm not asking those things to change, really. I honestly am not. I'm just asking for that kind of outreach, and I'm asking for it by doing it. That's one reason I do these videos, and this is a reason that I work towards this actively. That, to me, I don't really care what gender you are, or what race you are, or where you came from, or who your parents were. If you are talented and like this type of thing that I'm doing, or anything else, but this is the one I can focus on, I want to help you get there. I want to help you overcome that. And if that's by teaching you, then I will teach you. If that's by just helping you feel, a little bit accepted, I can give you a few other things that play into this. And one is that look at the way that people, speak, right? So to get into, a technology type job and a lot of other things, you need to go through college. And I speak pretty properly here, but in my normal life, I really don't. And I never really did, right? I was always kind of a tell it as it is kind of person. I wasn't afraid of slang or cursing or harsh language, coarse language, I would say. This is another type of person that is being a little bit pushed away from areas like this, that they look at college, universities, and see people with doctorates teaching programs, and they're being expected to write papers. I'm not saying any of those things are bad things, by the way, but it does give one the idea that, I see a doctoral thesis, I look at it, and I'm like, I don't talk like that. I don't write like that. I don't want, I'm not saying I couldn't do it, but I don't want to be like that, Therefore, I don't fit in. And that's yet another difference in a type of person that I try to fight against, that no, you can speak plainly, and you don't have to use big words or dress, super snazzy in order to be good at something, or to be accepted somewhere. And the unfortunate truth to all of it, and this spans, things like race, gender, upbringing, parents, how you are, how you speak, all of these things, and I'm surely missing many. There are still people out there that will exclude you because of things like this. Each and every one that I just mentioned. And that sucks. That sucks. But I try to implore people not to pay attention to that, because although it could potentially hinder you, it probably won't. And it certainly isn't going to stop you. If you're motivated, if you like what you like with what I'm doing, if you like programming, if you can do it well, then that's not going to stop you. That's not going to stop you. And I guess that's my main point with the whole diversity thing, is to me, I don't really have a specific metric in mind or a specific type of person I'm trying to reach. I'm really trying to find people who want to do something. They are underconfident for one reason or another, and I'm trying to help them to understand that those insecurities, whatever they may be, especially if they're one of these things that you couldn't really control, those are not things that should stop you from getting into doing something that you love, because I don't know how terrible my life would be if it hadn't happened to me. So, thanks for listening to my little rant here, guys. If you like this video, give me a like. If you don't like it, give me a dislike, but please tell me why. If you want to see more stuff like this, please subscribe to my channel. I pretty much have been doing this every weekend at this point. Have a good night.